My next book is about Jacquetta, Lady of the Rivers. She was born into the House of St. Paul, the ducal house of the Duchy of Luxembourg, and when she was a girl her father inherited the Duchy of Luxembourg and they moved to the beautiful Luxembourg Palace, a very large and famous dukedom in the centre of Europe. They were related to almost everybody in Europe. There's hardly anybody who isn't a cousin of the St. Pauls, including the Holy Roman Emperor, some of the kings of France, and indeed the kings of England. She was married at a very young age, about 15 or 16, we don't know her exact age, to John, Duke of Bedford, who was then serving as regent of France for his little nephew, Henry VI, who was left in charge of the throne of England as a baby on the death of his father, Henry V. So at a very young age, she became, as it were, mistress of the English lands in France and the leading lady at the English court of France. John, Duke of Bedford, brought her to England, and she met her nephew, Henry VI, who was by then a young man. And John, Duke of Bedford faced a hostile inquiry from Parliament into the management of the lands of France, but triumphed, went back to France with his young bride, and died there before peace could be established. At that point, Jacquetta, to all intents and purposes, should have returned to her family home and been remarried, or the King of England should have decided a suitable contractual marriage for her, instead of which she married in secret for love a man who was really nothing but a nobody, the squire of her former husband, Richard Woodville, and he took her to England and they set up home in the village of Grafton, and from there Jacquetta's career as an English Dowager Duchess began. The novel opens at the castle of Beaurevoir in France, when Jacquetta is, as it were, being sent around her noble kinsman to learn how to be a young lady. But that castle she learned something rather extraordinary, because she was there when the woman Joan of Arc, who was to the French possibly even on the way to being a saint, and to the English was their greatest enemy. Joan of Arc had inspired the French army to victories against the occupying English army, and it happened that it was Jacquetta's uncle who took her into captivity. So Jacquetta may have met her, and would certainly have been there when Joan was subsequently sentenced by the English and burned for treason and for witchcraft. There too she would have met the ruler of France, John, Duke of Bedford, who was later to become her first husband.